What is the worst thing that someone has done to you? And how much pain did it cause? The reason why I'm asking you this today is because forgiveness isn't easy to do. And sometimes we feel it's easier to hold a grudge or to seek justice than it is to forgive. So let's talk about that today. Join me. Well, I have to admit that things aren't going the way I thought they would today. My gimbal here has been fighting me, and then it ran out of batteries. I guess I should have made sure it was fully charged. Wow, let's get into the meat and bones of today. Forgiveness. It's a challenging subject. It's easy to talk about. Often it's hard to really allow that to happen in your life. But there are some truths about forgiveness that we can't ignore. And today I want to explore some of those truths. When I asked you in the intro to think about the worst thing that someone has done to you, many of you probably were like, I don't want to go there. It's too painful. And I don't blame you. There are things that have happened in this world, there are things that have happened to you in particular that I have no idea of the amount of pain that it cost. I have no idea of the amount of anguish that you've gone through as a result of those events that took place because of the actions of another person. So I'm not here to make light of it, because what you feel is real. What you feel is a natural part of the grief cycle when you go through an experience like you've experienced. And so forgiveness probably isn't going to come easy if you're even able to do it at all. And I'm not here today to force you into forgiving. I'm only here to share with you what I've learned about forgiveness. Because forgiveness comes with a cost. It's not something that is just free. We can freely give it, but there's a cost associated with it. And that cost, we don't always know what that cost could be. If we look at the negative side of it, forgiving someone opens the door to allow them to potentially do the similar thing again. If not to you, to potentially somebody else. So there's a cost. Forgiving somebody could mean that you have to let go of the pain. It could mean that you have to let go of something you've been holding on to that feels more comfortable, even though it's painful, than the idea of being free. And so forgiveness in many ways is difficult, because sometimes we feel justified to seek the vengeance through either taking action in ourselves by retaliating, or by, if it goes to the legal system, seeking justice through the legal system. And then we think by getting that form of vengeance, or by being justified in our feelings, or being justified in the actions taken towards a person who has harmed you, will create closure. I'd like you to think about that, and possibly think about an alternative. Because oftentimes what I've experienced, what I found, is when I'm seeking vengeance, when I'm seeking justice, when I'm holding on to the grudge because I feel justified to be in the hurt, in the pain, in the emotions of what I'm going through because of what somebody did to me, it oftentimes makes things worse for me. Forgiveness has so many different layers to it. It's very deep. When we think of forgiveness, yes, there's an element that is passed on to the person that we're forgiving, or the being that we're forgiving, or the entity that we're forgiving, or the system that we're forgiving. But then there's also the part for ourselves. Because part of the cost of forgiveness means that we are to let go. Let go of the hurt. Let go of the pain. Let go of the idea of justification. Let go of the idea of justice or vengeance. Let go of the idea that we can control somebody else by not forgiving them. And believe it or not, by us not forgiving those who have harmed us or those who have hurt us, also causes harm to those who harmed us. You may not be able to see it physically. You may not be able to see it emotionally. But there are powers and things at play within this world that go beyond what we can see. There's a part in the Bible where Peter asked Jesus, how many times shall we forgive somebody? 3 times? 7 times? And depending on the translation that you read into English, there are 2 numbers that are given, or 2 phrases that are given. One is 77 times, and the other is 70 times 7. I'm not here to be a scholar and tell you which one is right or wrong, but I did do a little research into these numbers today because I know Jesus speaks in layers when he talks about things. And specifically when numbers are involved, there's more to it than just the number that is given. And this is where things are overlooked. See, people can read the numbers and it doesn't matter which number it is. They can interpret it and they say, well, it's really just a saying to say that there's unconditional forgiveness, meaning that you just continue forgiving the person despite how many times they harm you. And there's truth to that. That's one layer. That's like the surface layer. Then there's another layer where those two specific numbers are referred to in a passage in Genesis where Lamech lays out a curse of vengeance against those who have harmed him, and he says, I will curse and I will get my revenge to 77 times or whatever it was. I can't remember the exact number. And so through the number 77, Jesus was basically erasing that curse. And with the 490, the 70 times 7, it refers to a passage in Daniel which talks about the exile, or the amount of time, the number of years that Israel was going to be going through a purification process to be reconciled from their sins and their ways. And so that symbolically 490 times is a symbolic journey of Israel's journey and the coming Messiah. But there's a layer even deeper than that. And I believe this is kind of where I'm going with this because, like I said, Jesus talks in layers. And numbers play a significant role in the Bible. And the number 7 in particular is a number of completion, a number of rest, a number of restoration. It's a number of completeness. But the number of maturity, when you double it, it's by doing it as 77, it compounds the effects of the meaning of that number. So what does that mean for us when it comes to forgiveness? That goes beyond the idea of forgiving unlimitedly. It means that by forgiving others and continuing to forgive others, by continuing to have a spirit of forgiveness and letting go, it does something internal to us. Not only does it bring healing to us, but it brings a spiritual maturity. It brings a sense of completion. It brings a sense of wholeness. It doesn't mean the event didn't happen. It doesn't mean that the pain wasn't there. But there's something deeper in that act of forgiveness and continuing to forgive those who have harmed us. And if we were to look at the larger number, 490, it is a larger spiritual cycle, similar to what Israel went through. It's considered to be a threshold number. a number again of smashing and completing all ties to that incident. By forgiving 490 times, you're going through a refining process. A process that on a deeper, more spiritual level is refining you and bringing you closer to the fullness of who God has created us to be, is bringing us closer to being in tune with God. When I think about my journey of through life, and I think about the things that I've gone through, the challenges I went through in my marriage, some of them were caused by my own doing. Some of them were caused by my ex-wife. When I think about the aftermath of the divorce and where my relationship stands with the family as it is, the estrangement from my daughters, the lack of communication with my ex-wife, unless it has to do with scheduling with my son. All of that I'm going through has elements of lack of forgiveness in it, whether it be from me or it's from them. And I'm not here to judge them, I'm not here to condemn them, I'm not here to call them out. They're on their own journey. I'm here to talk about myself. What do I still have to forgive towards them? What do I have to forgive them for? It means I gotta get deeper. I gotta let go. Let go of the hurt that I feel on a fairly regular basis. Doesn't mean that I don't get triggered. It doesn't mean that those emotions still don't come up. But every time they do, instead of holding on to them, holding on to a grudge and saying, why are they putting me through this? I can forgive them. Not to make me pious or to make me better than, but so that I can mature. So that I can grow spiritually, as I shared earlier. It's a journey. It's one that I walk every day. And I'm not perfect at it, by no means. But when I was thinking about this today, that's small potatoes compared to what some of you guys have gone through. But it still comes down to the same thing. Are you willing to forgive? Are you willing to let go? And there's another layer to it as well. And that's the forgiveness of ourselves. And that's another area that is often overlooked. And it's like, well, what do I have to forgive myself for? Well, again, using the example of my marriage, there are things that I did within the marriage that caused hurt, that caused pain. I lied. I withheld information. I withheld myself at times. I hid. I didn't provide in the ways that my wife at the time needed. And I'm not talking about just financially, monetarily, I'm talking about emotionally. So in that, I caused just as much pain in the marriage as she did. And oftentimes when I look back at that, I can beat myself up and say, well, Jesus, Jason, you were not a great guy. You were terrible in many ways. And so I can either choose to continue to beat myself up, or I can choose to forgive. So forgiveness isn't just for forgiving others. It's forgiving ourselves as well. Extending grace to ourselves as well. And that forgiveness is to come just as unending or unfiltered or unconditional as we are to give it to those who have harmed us. Because truth be told, we can do more harm to ourselves than oftentimes others can do to us. And sometimes that forgiveness comes in the way of forgiving ourselves for holding on to those grudges, for holding on to those ideas of vengeance, of retaliation. Forgiving ourselves for allowing ourselves to wallow in that suffering for as long as we have. Forgiving ourselves for thinking wrongly of others. Because that can happen too. Because we can make assumptions and we can have these preconceived ideas that somebody has done something to us and harmed us in some way. And they may not have done anything. And we can drum up this story in our mind that this person did this, that, and that to us. And really, they were just living their life with no preconceived or ill intention towards anything towards you. It's just a simple misunderstanding from your part, or from my part, because I've been in that position too. And we hold on to this grudge towards this person, and it could last for lengthy periods of time. And it's all in our head. And it can get pretty easy for us to be stuck in our heads when it comes to the idea of holding on to these grudges or other things. And that's where suffering comes into play. Because the longer we hold on to the pain, the hurt, the more it causes turmoil within our bodies, within our systems. The more it causes our body to age. Disease happens. Mental illness happens. There's a cost. There's a cost to holding on to the grudges. There's a cost to holding on to these ideas of vengeance. And there's a cost to forgiveness. The truth is you just have to evaluate what are you willing to pay. What are you going to allow? What is the cost that you're willing to endure? One can cause more hurt, more pain. The other can bring life, healing, and spiritual attunement. So I want you to think about this for a moment. What I shared today. Forgiveness is possible. You may not think that it is in the moment because of the pain or the anguish that you're going through. It may not be easy for you to even fathom the idea of forgiving another person at this point in time in your life. But it comes at a cost. There's a cost to not forgiving. But there's also a cost to forgiving. Forgiveness isn't just about the other person, even though it has a lot to do with the other person. Forgiveness has a lot to do with yourself, with who you are, and what you're going through, and who you're becoming. Forgiveness not only means to forgive others, but it means to forgive yourself. Because without forgiving yourself, you can hold just as much turmoil and anguish within yourself as you do by not forgiving others. There are deeper layers to forgiveness beyond just the simple act of doing it. There are deeply rooted spiritual and physical things that happen through the act of forgiveness, through the willingness to forgive. Forgiveness brings healing, not only physically, but emotionally. And forgiving, on a spiritual level, brings a connection to God, a deeper, closer connection to God. It brings an alignment, an attunement. It brings a sense of peace. It brings a sense of comfort. Maybe not right in the moment, but the more you learn to forgive, the more often you forgive, the more you'll recognize that to be true. So my ending question for you today is, are you willing to forgive? Until next time, much love. I want to thank you today for taking the time to watch this video. As you can tell, I'm very passionate about the messages that I put forward on this channel. And I'm also very passionate about where I'm going and moving forward with in Lifting the Soul Ministries. So if you would like to support me in any way, I would ask that you please hit the like and subscribe button on this channel, but also reach out to me at j.cormac@liftingthesoulministries.com. That is j.cormac@liftingthesoulministries.com. And all this information will be provided in the comments below. Much love.